Right now, British politics is all about migration, migration, migration. Are we on course for a second Brexit? Welcome to Bridge the Channel. Hello and welcome to another episode of Bridge the Channel, brought to you by the Martens Center. Are we headed for another Brexit moment in British politics? It sure feels like it when I hear all the rhetoric around migration that is now dominating the discourse of most major British political parties. Since the end of summer, migration has been topic number one in British political debate. And if you're watching this from the EU, it is important to understand that it is not only an issue of domestic politics, but it may well affect the EU-UK relationship. Why? Let's explore in this month's episode. One topic that is becoming increasingly prominent in British debate is British membership of the European Convention of Human Rights, a previously arcane and obscure topic, but it's now becoming even more important because it is becoming evident that British commitments in the European Convention of Human Rights are keeping the UK government from dealing forcefully, or at least as forcefully as some would want, with the issue of illegal migration. It's important to note that right now, both the party leading the polls, Reform UK under Nigel Farage, and the official opposition of the Conservative Party now have as their official policies the UK's exit from the European Convention of Human Rights. And of course, this matters a lot also for the EU-UK relationship. The European Convention of Human Rights forms an important framework and is an important parameter in the security and judicial cooperation between the two sides. And of course, it also matters a lot for the issue of Northern Ireland. Of course, we can imagine that Nigel Farage would like nothing more to play back the great Brexit hits, to stage again another heroic British exit from a European institution. Will this happen? Of course, the elections are still a few years from now, but right now it does not seem to be any other political constellation that could take over power in Westminster after and beyond Labour that would not lead the UK outside of the European Convention of Human Rights. If and when that happens, the relationship between the UK and the EU will be severely complicated. Another issue that is becoming increasingly prominent in the debate around migration is the status of migrants here in the UK. There seems to be an increasing appetite not only to restrict migration into the country, but to also revisit the status of those who are already here. Reform UK, of course, started the debate, reignited the debate by claiming that if it ever gained power, all immigrants in the UK would essentially have to reapply to renew their ability to stay in the country. Pressure from Reform, the Conservatives themselves issued a new policy. They claimed that they would only restrict benefits to British citizens and not to immigrants. Now, it is important to note that both parties had to unenthusiastically concede that those measures would not apply to settled EU citizens, those EU citizens who live in the UK and whose status is regulated by the agreement, the bilateral agreement between the UK and the EU. But of course, if you're the EU, that is still problematic because not all EU citizens in the UK are covered by settled status. And of course, we do not know where all this rhetoric can lead. Can we imagine a Nigel Farage government finding out that the numbers, the promises it has made don't add up, and it suddenly decides that the UK should also revisit the status of settled EU citizens here in the UK? We have already seen that the British government and the British political system is not shy to revisit Britain's international commitments if it gets in the way of domestic policies and promises made to the British electorate. Right now, again, this is just one scenario among many, but it is again difficult to see how in the future one of the very pillars that regulate the relationship between the EU and the UK, the status of EU citizens in the UK, will not be put under pressure. That was another episode of Bridge the Channel, bringing to you the rather worrying news that what we may be seeing right now from the British government of Keir Starmer, this pragmatic, moderate approach in the UK-EU relationship, may well be a mirage. One possibility the EU should be prepared for is that the EU-UK relationship could take a turn for the worse. Will it? Of course, we'll be here to analyze all of this for you. Until next time, take care.